That's where a lot of my family live. They've migrated from Anguilla for maybe centuries. So that's why I'm concerned as to what will happen after Brexit.
And we didn't vote, but that's the price we pay for being an overseas territory.
Do you feel British?
Am I British? Can I openly say that and feel comfortable that I'm a British person? Are we just a little dot hanging with a name that is not really true to us?
My name is Nisha Dupy, and I live in Britain, or a part of it called Anguilla. Across the sea, 10 miles away is France, or Sint Maarten, a French and Dutch island. We are closer, more reliant on it even than Britain is to France. A large part of our transport, food, and health services come from Sint Maarten. Last year, Anguilla was hit by Hurricane Irma, but the big storm this year is Brexit. Will we be cut off from the European neighbor we so depend on?
Anguilla and Sint Maarten is like brother and sister, or brother and brother. You know, it's, we depend on each other.
Do you ever find yourself having to go to Sint Maarten to use any of the services?
Oh yes, all the time. You know, the health services, medicine. My wife, she depends on them very strongly. She has to take certain medication every day of her life. So she has to go there for that.
Do you feel that in light of all of this, Anguillians should have been consulted?
At least we would have been treated as human beings, like people recognize that we are here, you know, and that our lives value something.
Anguilla is heavily dependent on neighbouring Sint Maarten for the transshipment of essential goods and services like food, international access, and post.
This is Roadway Port, and we have two mainly cargo boats that comes from Sint Maarten, and that is one of our biggest suppliers that really help us through, especially if you need something on a day-to-day basis.
Do you have an idea of how much items that Anguilla imports?
Ooh.
Yeah.
To be honest, sometimes we run to 25 pages of goods. That's per boat. So we really, on a really busy day, sometimes we don't even have space to store the stuff.
International laws, to apply them sometimes to our islands is extremely difficult, even as to how many miles you're supposed to fish from Anguilla. Yeah. If you even look at that, we're overlapping with the French, we're overlapping with the Dutch in terms of how much miles you're supposed to fish.
Currently, the island relies on Sint Maarten for many essential health services.
One of our main concerns is our access to the services that we currently have in Sint Maarten, because there is no resident pathologist here, but also sometimes the patients will need to go over to do certain tests that we don't carry out here. For example, we have no MRI machine here in Anguilla, and sometimes even the CT scans. So it's very, very convenient for us to have access to that type of services in Sint Maarten.
Anguilla's main industry is tourism, and with freedom of movement between EU and non-EU countries yet to be finalized, people are worried about the impact on the tourism industry.
Suppose that there's restriction of movement between Anguilla and Sint Maarten. How would that impact your business?
Without Sint Maarten, without the ease of travel and trade into Sint Maarten, it would be almost impossible for us to do business, simply because our airport right now is not adequate in size and our runway is not long enough to accommodate those international flights by those major airline carriers. Businesses like mine may have to close our doors, or we may have to move.
Because the Caribbean island is a British overseas territory, Anguillians hold British passports.
I have this passport. My kids also have this passport. will we lose that? You know, what does it mean? Do we go back to our Anguilla passport? You know, there's that feeling of uncertainty. We need to know direction and what does it mean and how the British feels about us, how we feel about them. We need to have that conversation.
They still treat the overseas territories as though they're still babies, they're still children, and not understanding that these children are now grown adults who they should respect their views, they should respect where they're coming from, they should see how they can now build a relationship that will help to propel not only the overseas territories, but England itself.
If something was to jeopardize or restrict sort of like the movement of people between Anguilla and Sint Maarten, what effect do you think that would have?
You will see a lot of more boats building, private boats to different people. You'll see a lot of those building. So if that happens, you'll see your dad building a boat, my dad building a boat, his dad building a boat. So everybody go about it, you know.
So you think they would like find another way to like enter, no matter what?
No matter what, we gonna find a way.
Why?
Because we need Sint Maarten for everything. Everything we need Sint Maarten for, everything.
We hope that this relationship can continue, you know, because if it doesn't, I think the people will break laws to make sure that the relationship continues. The people themselves will do it.
Well, with me now is Blondel Cluff, who's Anguilla's representative to the UK and the EU. The government, the British government, says it is actively considering the interests of Anguilla. Do you trust that they have your best interests at heart?
I think, well, we've spent 2 years undertaking star jumps in front of the various government departments to point out the fact that we have a border not only with the French but also with the Dutch. They have been on a steep learning curve because I was horrified when I first went into one of the offices that they hadn't realised that we had a border, 2 borders in fact. So there's a perpetual learning curve, I'm afraid.
Do you think they know now? Do they understand now?
There's no time for them not to know. They have to know now.
Well, some, I suppose, might say, well, Anguilla's small, population of 15,000. You know, the most immediate and pressing concern for the British government is nearly, 2 million people living in Northern Ireland, which is, in some ways, there are similarities, aren't there?
No, true, that's true. But I think it's been put to us that actually all of it has to be settled for there to be an agreement. And you're talking about 15,000 British citizens. And I think that we should be part of that definition of all. We're part of the British family of nations.
What makes you think you won't be, though?
The nervousness that I see in the EU when I go across to Brussels, that the French and the Dutch are concerned that this hasn't been sort of flagged up enough. They're concerned for St. Maarten. They have 100,000 people on St. Maarten. So, you know, they've got more sort of skin in the game there. And of course, with all of the islands having been devastated by Hurricane Irma, they know the importance of this continued symbiotic relationship to the recovery from Hurricane Irma.
Well, how fearful are you if Anguilla doesn't get special treatment?
Well, I know that on the ground, the citizens of the islands all want this to work, and that's a very important element in this whole equation. It will be a question of either people forgetting to allow scope within the agreement for this relationship to continue and to develop in the post-Brexit context, because notwithstanding what I've been told perpetually by government that nothing will change, Europe believes that things will change. And so I'm a solicitor of over 35 years standing. There has to be consensus on whether things will change or not. And so we have to accept that the other party believe that's going to be the case.
Well, when you were doing your star jumps in the government departments, as you put it, to get attention, what solution did you offer the British government to get them out of this hole?
I think what we've got here is a fantastic opportunity to show how a Brexit scenario can work. You've got 115,000 people who want it to work on the ground. We have flexibility of movement in terms of developing the relationship, provided that is not stifled by an acrimonious no-deal scenario, because then politics can come along and suffocate the whole sort of potential. And that's really the risk. It's not about the myriad of agreements and the fact that we're out of Schengen and so on. It's about whether or not acrimonious politics may come along and suffocate these people who, I'm told by the Commission, it's 50-50. We're not that important in the scheme of things. And unfortunately, I think that we should be.
Blondel Cluff, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Matt.